let's just face it, I decided to call it quits on playing through Little Nightmares 3 when I got to the final chapter after watching all of the gameplay. Honestly, from watching the gameplay, Little Nightmares 3 is pretty much the most disappointing chapter in the game so far. It is extremely the worst. And here are the reasons why. And the first is the purpose of the storytelling. Specifically in Little Nightmares 1 and 2, there was a huge strategy when it came to the storytelling. The story's hints were given to us as we played through the game. The actual story, in the way it was told, was based on just the environmental attributes to the actual game itself. And not only just through the gameplay, the environments that we were in those games were part of the storytelling. The things that the characters were doing in those games was part of the storytelling. It was shown to us rather than told to us. It got showed to us as we made our way through the games. That was one big thing that Tarsier did for Little Nightmares 1 and 2. However, in Little Nightmares 3, this was made the complete opposite. The story was already told to us before it got showed to us. The story of Little Nightmares 3 was told to us through the Sounds of Nightmares podcast series that was done before Little Nightmares 3 came out. And the elements that we saw within the Little Nightmares 3 game were part of the Sounds of Nightmares podcast series. And all we had to really do is just re-pick up on the storytelling of this podcast series to make sense of what was happening in Little Nightmares 3. And that makes a huge difference when it comes to the storytelling. Moving swiftly on to the next reason why it was so disappointing, and that is copy and paste. Specifically speaking, the enemies of the game. The baby monster did not feel like a proper enemy. There was barely much interaction with the baby monster itself. The eye feature of the baby monster with the light that came out from the eyes, we've seen it before in Little Nightmares 1 with the eye feature in the mall, and we've also had it in Very Little Nightmares as well. We've had it in multiple different games. So we've had this eye light, the light coming out of eyes in Very Little Nightmares and Little Nightmares 1. We've seen that before. And the baby monster being a giant and being a doll, the appearance of the character, yes, was a little bit strange, but it just didn't seem scary enough, and the interactions lacked when it came to Baby Monster. Take on the next character after that when we went into the Candy Factory, which is Chapter 2 of Little Nightmares 3. Our second enemy is the Supervisor. The Supervisor, in appearance, had a similar sort of attribute to that of the teacher. Was supposed to look like this quite powerful looking woman that seemed to have some form of discipline within her, but in reality she wasn't human. She was just a flipping spider like character. hence why she had multiple arms, so she could use those multiple arms to crawl around on walls and ceilings. But another character already had been seen crawling around on walls and ceilings prior to this, that being the Doctor in Little Nightmares 2. The Doctor was clearly seen crawling around on walls and ceilings in Little Nightmares 2, in the hospital chapter, which was technically chapter 3 of Little Nightmares 2. And though the appearance-wise had some similarities to that of the teacher, chapter 2 of Little Nightmares 2, it just lacked. When it came to the whole spider mode and the supervisors chasing after us, we never really got those close call features that we had in the previous games. Like, think about how when we were chased by the teacher as we're working our way through the vent at the end of chapter 2 in Little Nightmares 2, when the teacher's chasing after us with her long neck, you get these close interactions with her where she nearly captures us in one of the elements. Like, these close call interactions with the actual enemy characters themselves lacked in Little Nightmares 3. And that can also be said with the supervisor. And also the Kin and Minikin character, or the are technically nicknamed now the ventriloquist at the carnival in Little Nightmares 3. That character lacked in interaction. He just stood there and barely did anything to us that caused any harm. The only character that did try to cause harm were his puppets. And also having the guests reappear in Little Nightmares 3, not just in the candy factory but also in the carnival, they didn't even see themselves as threats. They weren't even threatening to, like, turn around and grab us and eat us like they did in the Maw in Little Nightmares 1. Like, in Little Nightmares 1, they were always hungry to grab us and eat us alive in Little Nightmares 1 when we were playing as 6 in the Maw. Like, that happened with the guests. But that wasn't the case in Little Nightmares 3. They weren't even that much of a threat to us. They were just there as props and easily able to just be distracted by other things around them. So that was just pointless to have them there. Another thing that was completely pointless to have there was the Beatles as monsters or enemies within the necropolis. Like, they were completely useless. Like, it didn't seem to have, like, the same attributes to that as, like, the hands in Little Nightmares 2 or the bullies in Little Nightmares 2. It never had that same attribute to them. And like I was saying with the Kin/ventriloquist, lack of interaction, and it was mainly the Minikin that was, or the puppet that was, like, the most interactive with us, but never really got too close. Again, too distant. Then our final enemy of Little Nightmares 3 was Otto from the Sounds of Nightmares podcast series. The whole long arms and long legs, like the long arms feature, we've seen it before with Roger the janitor in Little Nightmares 1. He had long arms, so he was able to reach up and grab us quickly from higher elements of a room. Like, take that for example. Or how about, like, the fact that these long arms were stretchy and were able to move as well. That gave similar vibes to that as the teacher's long movable neck in Little Nightmares 2. It just felt too familiar and too similar to characters we've already had in previous games. So that was another lack. And the actual close interaction with those characters actually lacked as well, massively within the game. Moving on to the next problem that's in Little Nightmares 3, and that is the co-op situation. In terms of co-op, the co-op mode is only online co-op, and they have to physically have a copy of the game for that specific console to play together. There is no normal local co-op where it's able to split screen or anything like that. It's just done online, which was a major problem in Little Nightmares 3. And in still sticking to that co-op style feature, the whole solo mode where the character is AI controlled also was awful and should not have happened the way it did. The AI interactions with Six in Little Nightmares 2 were way better than the interactions with Alone or Law in Little Nightmares 3. Six was still there in Little Nightmares 2 to do what was needed to be done to swiftly continue on in the game. Whereas, for example, if I'm playing as Law in Little Nightmares 3 and I need Alone to smash a wall down, Alone wouldn't even do what needed to be done and never smashed that wall down with the wrench. She'd just stand there on the opposite side, just staring at us. And I'm just standing on the side where the wall is that needs to be smashed down, calling them over, hey, come over here, with the call technique, which was technically copy and pasted from Little Nightmares 2. The AI interactions with our characters needed better improvement. There was elements in the game where the character would just walk off in a completely different direction when we needed them most to complete an actual puzzle. Like, sometimes they were there, but they never were. They were there, but they just didn't want to do what we needed to do to move on to the next segment of the game. So the interaction of AI control also was out of the way for Little Nightmares 3. It was just awful. Another thing that I didn't really like in Little Nightmares 3 was directly the ending. The whole point of Alone being just an imaginary friend was just not a really good twist into the plot of the game. Having Alone just be this stupid doll was just rubbish. I felt like it just lacked. That Alone was just completely made up out of Law's imagination was like just a terrible plot twist in terms of things. Like, the whole plot twist of Mono being the Thin Man, which was our final enemy in Little Nightmares 2, like, that was unexpected. We didn't expect Mono to be that specific character, and when it got revealed to us at the end, we were like, oh my, that's just shocking. Like, we were able to react to it proper. So our reactions to the way that things worked in Little Nightmares 3 were way less than what we expected to have. We were expected to have these shocking moments where something would be revealed that we weren't quite expecting, yet we already expected it to happen because it was already revealed in the podcast series in Little Nightmares 3. So that was another thing that was that it seemed like some of the characters were fake, had like fake accompanied people around them. Was like not really a good plot twist. And that could also be the same said with the whole mirrors, with all the mirrors in Little Nightmares 3. Like, it seemed like, from what I could tell when I first saw the mirror appear in the first teaser of Little Nightmares 3, I thought at first that it was going to be the Mirror Man, which was going to be one of the enemies that was supposed to appear in Little Nightmares 1, that never did. But they made an appearance in the Little Nightmares 1 comics, and having that character return for Little Nightmares 3, that's what I thought was going to happen, and he was going to be the final enemy of this franchise, and we'd have to defeat him to escape the nowhere. But that never happened. The mirrors were just there, just for a way of being able to move along through the spiral of the nowhere, you know. They just lacked interest. So, in the ways of different features, it just was worthless. And there you have it. There are some of the reasons why Little Nightmares 3 has been the most disappointing game in Little Nightmares history. But let's hope that if they do come up with anything in future, for future games, we see a better side to Little Nightmares than we have in Little Nightmares 3.